Hi, Achim from InnerSpace Explorers. This is the second part of the disinfection video. In case you haven't seen the first one, check out the link in the description. There I'm talking about scuba gear being disinfected. In today's second part we talk about rebreather disinfection. So it basically doesn't matter if it's oxygen rebreather, PSCR or CCR, ECCR, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. I just wanted to show you what I do and how I do it and why I do it and what I used to do it on an oxygen rebreather. There's no specific reason for that. It was just the first box on the shelf that came up when I went down picking a rebreather to talk about this. So for all of those that basically are only interested in the rebreather topic, I just repeat what I said in the other one, what I use and why I use it. So those of you based in the United States probably use something that's called Steramine, which is tablets, and I put a picture right here. This product is recommended by a lot of manufacturers and I used it for a lot of years. All good. The thing is, it's not available in Europe, so I've never really figured out why, but you can definitely not buy it here, like also not on Amazon or whatever. They don't ship to Europe. So there might be a reason for that, but that's the product that I used when in the US. So in Europe, I use something that's called Virkon S. It's actually from the vet, basically to disinfect cages and stuff. And that's also recommended by various manufacturers, and a lot of people in the rebreather community use it. That's a powder that you basically just put in water, so create a solution and then use that. The big advantage of using tablets and or a powder is that you can travel with that stuff. So when I go on a liveaboard or something like that, obviously I don't want to take a liter of liquor or something with me in the plane, which, as you know, is always a bit of a pain today, and obviously you can spill it and it can create a mess and all kind of trouble. So this is easy. And then and I already talked about this in the first video, if you're in certain places around the world, make sure you use clean water for this. So also for rinsing your gear. I see a lot of people on liveaboards that take their rebreathers and then rinse them with the water that they use to shower, just to get the salt water off, which comes from the tanks of the liveaboard. It might work in some areas, but in some, it's for sure not water you want to drink. So my rule of thumb is that I use water that would be drinkable to rinse my rebreather. So I think that's a very safe guideline. Alright, the other thing I use for disinfection is one of these pump spray guns. So you can create pressure in there and then you just press it and it sprays, and actually you can adjust the nozzle here and it creates a very fine mist. So the reason I'm using that is that you can cover a surface very well with a relatively small amount of the material instead of just pouring it in. Obviously this stuff here, for example, I could also just make a solution and fill this tub and then just soak it. Also depends a little bit on what you want to do or why you want to disinfect it. So that brings me to the next topic. When do you want to disinfect your rebreather? Again, it depends. It depends a little bit on the climate that you're in. So if I'm diving continuously over a couple of days or weeks in a hot, humid climate, I do it every 3 days. So let's say Egypt liveaboard, 3 days diving, I disinfect my rebreather, 3 days diving, I disinfect my rebreather. That might be more than necessary, and obviously I know a lot of people who don't do it at all, even if they spend 2 weeks on a liveaboard. I've seen a couple of nasty lung infections and people really suffering from that. So I think personally better you disinfect it once more, and then hey, there's somebody unhappy. Nada, come here. So yeah, you want to be in the picture. So this is Nala, say hi, hello. So yeah, it might be a bit too much, but better you disinfect it once more and you're safe than you don't disinfect it and then in the end you have trouble. So obviously that's different when you dive in colder climates. So let's say I'm in Norway doing wreck diving for a while, and then probably I do it once a week because you don't have the heat and the humid climate around. And So that seems to be a bit safer. Same goes salt water versus fresh water. Obviously, you always want to disinfect your rebreather if somebody else used it. There's the old saying, you don't borrow out your wife, your fountain pen on your car. So on rebreather divers, the rebreather comes first, the rest you can borrow somebody. So if somebody else used your breather, and I mean, if you're an instructor, you probably borrowed somebody for a test dive, you have a machine that you rent out to people, they do classes, stuff like that. So I do it with this oxygen rebreather. So somebody does an oxygen rebreather class with me, doesn't have his own one, he can use mine. So obviously, always after the class, the unit goes through a full disinfection cycle and then gets stored. That's just a habit, always. So that's the only safe way to be sure that you give a clean and safe unit to somebody. And obviously, if you want to reuse it, that's about your own safety as well. So let's think a little bit of how we do this. So what components do we want to disinfect? We want to disinfect the counterlung. We want to disinfect the lime canister. We want to disinfect the breathing hoses. And we want to disinfect the mouthpiece. So that's just examples for all other rebreathers. That's the components that need disinfection. On the oxygen rebreather specifically, we have this thing which is called a Drool Pad. That's something that's in the counterlung because the oxygen rebreather doesn't have a water trap. So that's basically to soak up salvia and stuff. You can disinfect that a couple of times, but generally I tend to throw it away and put a new one in. That's, I mean, yeah, this is a new one. So, as I said before, if it's small components like this, you can always put them in a tub like this and just soak it for a certain amount of time. I mean, this here says 30 minutes if you soak stuff in it. And it also depends a little bit on the concentration that you create. I mean, how many parts of this on a liter of water, for example. And what I normally do, if I don't have the chance to soak it, I just spray it continuously. So, for example, I take the hose like this, I spray in here, put a good amount in it, and then I shake it up a little bit. So I just make sure that I cover all the surface. Then I fill it with water, shake it around a little bit, drain it, shake it a little bit around, drain it, and then I flush it with clear water. This stuff actually, when you mix it up, the zircon gets a reddish color, actually almost pink. So it's a good visual indicator when there's no colored water coming out anymore. Then you rinsed it properly, and then I hang him up to dry in a well-ventilated area, not in the direct sun, obviously. And I mean, this one is easy. Here you just have to make sure you get inside of the mushroom valves. In this case, I can take him out on a couple of rebreathers. That's a little bit more different. So I always go through the mouthpiece, and then obviously you want to open it up, and then, I mean, you have the flow in that case like this. You can spray it here, make sure it flows out. Basically fill this thing with water, with disinfection solution. And then same thing, you rinse it with fresh water till there's clean water, and then you want to dry it. This is the lime canister. Different models, as you know. I mean, you can take them apart. Some of them you can take apart a bit more, some of them less. This is stainless steel. There's some of plastic or whatever. So same thing, you spray this intensively so all the surface is covered. If you have surface area that you can wipe off, then you can actually do this. Actually, I think, yeah, there in the background is actually, so this is, for example, from my from my drag array that I converted. You may have seen the videos. So this is parts of the lime canister, and that you can take apart further, so you have more access to the interior, so it's easier here to get to all the surface and make sure this is all covered with disinfection solution, and then that can that can also be better wiped off. So it depends a little bit on the construction of the unit, but that's what you want to do. And then the counter lungs, same thing. You get the material in, you let it sit for a while, make sure, I mean, this one for example, I always really fill it up till basically, I mean, it starts to expand then a bit, because when the water comes in, it goes up. And then I make sure that all the surface areas, also the one inside here, is covered. I let it sit 30 minutes or whatever. Then I press it, get all the water out, flush it with fresh water, press it out, and so on, till everything's clean. And then I hang it up and let it dry. If you're in certain areas, more tropical areas, and you let your rebreather stuff dry out, make sure before you reassemble it that there's no guests in it, especially in the hoses. In certain areas of the world you can find cockroaches, spiders and critters like that in the hoses. It's wet, it's warm, it's dark, it's a great hiding spot. And there's a couple of nasty stories of people inhaling cockroaches and stuff. That's the last thing you want. And honestly, I already had a spider in one of them when I took it off in the Philippines and checking them. I was like, oops, you don't want something like that in your breathing loop. So make sure you check that before you reassemble or put it in storage. Alright, I hope that answered the questions that I had regarding disinfection. If you're interested in the scuba gear disinfection, please check the previous video, part number 1. Other than that, if you have questions and comments, please put them in the comment section. If you want to discuss things more in detail, please check out the Patreon site. And other than that, thank you very much for watching and stay safe. See you in the next video. Bye bye.